Craig Nash again here with It's a Grand Life. You're going to just be so blessed today. Our guest on the program for the second time is Robyn Wind from Generations United. And last time she introduced you to this fabulous organization out of Washington, D.C. that has all sorts of resources for us, the grand families. And we just want to encourage you to check out those websites, gu.org and grandfamilies.org, and even the gksnetwork.org. But today we're going to go a little deeper with Robyn. I want her to share with us her story of how she became part of a grand family. We heard last week how she's been involved with Generations United and how she works with all of us grand voices to try and encourage us to advocate for the grand families across our whole country. But Robyn, thanks so much for joining us again on It's a Grand Life. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got here?
Sure, Craig. I'm glad to be here with you again. Like I think I told you before, my name is Robyn Wind. I am Muskogee Creek and live on the Muskogee Creek Reservation in Oklahoma, just south of Tulsa. Prior to 2 years ago, I worked in Indian child welfare and foster care, mostly in leadership. So I do have child welfare background. But 9.5 years ago, I got a call that my grandson, it was the day before he turned 4 months old, needed placement because he had been severely injured. There was a little bit of neglect, and DHS was taking him into custody. He was in the hospital. So I had about 12 hours to, wow. I know, to prepare. And we hear this a lot. This is not, out of the ordinary. I had to come up with a car seat, crib, everything that an injured baby needs in about 12 hours. And I was, that single, and I was doing it on a child welfare salary, which was like zero. So it was a surprise and a shock. But he has been my great joy. I love him. And the first night I got him, Craig, he was injured. And he cried all night. And I thought, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I thought, I cannot do this. They're going to figure out, who did this or what's happened. And then he'll go back to either his mama or his daddy. So by about 6 o'clock in the morning, I started crying with him. And we got up and got dressed and went to work. He went to work with me for a while because we couldn't find daycare. So he's been a great blessing, great blessing.
So here you are, a child welfare professional. This is your vocation. You're an expert in navigating these waters and what have you. And now you're advocating on behalf of your own grandson. And how did you handle that emotionally, let alone professionally?
Well, it was awful. Like, I felt so, when something like this happens, you kind of grieve for what, you don't know what really has occurred. Why is your own child in this situation? How have we gotten into this situation? And you feel very alone. So I did have, other co-workers and friends who worked in child welfare, so they understood, but it's still not the same, right? You're still by yourself. And it was hard. Like you said, even though I knew all the contacts and who to speak with and how to get things, I still had a really hard time. So just accessing things. I'll give you an example. Just a couple of weeks before I think I got my little guy, I had taken a week-long course to be a trainer for the classes that you have to take when you're a foster parent. Okay. Well, they wanted me to take the classes. And I was like, I just went through your training classes. I can train it, And so it took months for them to say, oh, okay, that's fine. In that time, there was no help because, you have to meet these requirements. And
right.
They had to ask other people whether that was okay. So it was rough.
Very rough. And for those of us out here that are not familiar with the being part of a reservation, and I'm so glad that you're part of the GU family, and obviously you were here a lot longer before I was. But could you let our listeners know, are there some distinctives between being raised or raising your family on a reservation as opposed to just in Tulsa, for example, or outside of the reservation? And what would you want to share with us about that so we can be informed?
Well, on our reservation, we're very integrated. So there's not a whole lot of, I wouldn't say a whole lot of difference, but we do hold hard to our culture. We still do our ceremonies.
Mhm.
We very proud people, and we want our children involved in that. So that's why it's important to us for them to stay with us.
Sure.
And when they're, taken into custody or they need to be separated from mom and dad for a little while, it's important for them to stay with us. So there are certain laws that have to be followed, like the Indian Child Welfare Act. That's it helps keep us stable and securing our children with us. So there's some differences there.
Okay.
But I know that, my experience is different than someone who's on a reservation in Arizona. There's just all kinds of differences.
So each reservation situation could be different from the next.
It is. Mhm.
Okay. So it's not the same everywhere. But GU still represents folks on every tribe and every right? Every reservation.
Yes, sir. We have 12 tribal representatives right now.
Great.
That's a lot for us. There's hundreds of tribes, but I can't think of another organization that is not like that made a specific how do I say this, campaign to involve Native families in their programming like this. That's how I got here.
I think it's absolutely great, and I'm so glad you're sharing this with our audience, because we all need to be aware of all of us, and I didn't know that there were distinctives between one tribe and another tribe, and I remember when I had a radio show several years ago, I interviewed a Hispanic pastor from a small church in Detroit. And I assumed that all Hispanic folks were the same. And he was, oh, no. He just really educated me on that. And we just need to learn more about one another so we can respect and support one another. So thank you, Robyn, for sharing that today. I really appreciate it. And so there are some unique challenges then, depending on the reservation or the group that you're with, and especially in light of supporting the grand family, right?
Right. So with my little guy, he was taken into state custody, not tribal custody, but our tribe became involved in the court proceedings. So, for example, if he was in tribal custody, I would have been able to get things like a crib or help. There would be more support for me if he was in tribal custody, whereas the state came and they brought me a $50 gift card when I got in, and that was it, and a broken car seat. So there are differences. Not all tribes can do that. My tribe is a bigger tribe. It's one of the 4 biggest, in the nation, but so they have more resources. Okay. But yes, they followed along through the whole case, to ensure that best interest was happening, and so yes, we're very fortunate that way.
That's absolutely great. So, but that's built into the tribal system, that there's a support model there, with like a child welfare system as part of the tribal network, correct?
Yes.
So that's absolutely great. So there's not someone who's not familiar with the situation. There's someone actually from the tribe, I would imagine, that's coming to help navigate those waters, and at a time where it may be a little tense, is with someone's new integrating into the family and what have you. So I think I'm learning something here. That's absolutely great. So so I know you love your work as a Grand Voice support coordinator, and you work with all of us out here. And so what's your favorite part of that work?
Favorite part of that work is being with the grand families. We all have different but similar situations. And it's just like having an extra family to, because sometimes it's really lonely, if you have these kids who, your friends are, like you've said before, Craig, they're off on vacation in Florida and you're at the football field or whatever, or dance class. And they might be, hanging out at the casino or wherever, and you've got a screaming baby and you can't go. So it kind of narrows down your field of who you have for support, right? And then for people who their child might be in custody, you can't have just random people at the house. They have to be background checked, and some families might have problems with that. So it's very isolating. So my favorite part is every day I get to come to work and I get to visit with people like you and hundreds of others who understand my situation.
And it's with me, relatively new. We've been guardians of our granddaughter Grace for a little over a year, and we were always involved in raising her. Our daughter lived with us, but there's always the tension, a little bit of the tension between what's going on with the grandchild, the son or daughter, and what's happening with your son or daughter. What's going on with them? Are there any legal issues? Are there any behavioral health issues? Are there any addictive situations going on or any legal trouble that you have to be aware of? And I don't know if folks outside of the grand family really get that. Some days you feel like there's a little cloud following you around, yet you're running around chasing that grandson at the football game. Or like I was at the golf course this morning with my granddaughter finishing up her golf lessons, and it's just we have a kinship in that we understand that there are situations with our grandkids and there are situations with our kids, and the challenge is with us all the time, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I think people, especially if you're working in child welfare, you forget that my little guy, his daddy is my son, right?
Right.
He was my first child and my first love, my first great love.
Right.
And he might have got himself into a situation where that wasn't great, but that doesn't make him bad. He might have some mental health issues or some substance use issues, but that doesn't make him a bad child, and he's still my child, and I would worry about him.
Right.
Now, in June, I lost my son, my little guy's daddy, and I've been very fortunate to have grand voices. There's lots of us that have lost a child, so I have that support there. But one thing that's also important is to try to build a big family for my little guy, so that he knows that not just me, not just his grandpa love him, that he has got. So we run in a herd, even though sometimes his mama and I don't agree on things. We still sit together and try to make an effort to be there for him. And you'll never hear a bad thing come out of my mouth about his mama, even though this situation isn't ideal. So it is a situation that most people don't have to live with, but 2.5 million people do.
Right. And the more I'm in this neighborhood, the grand family neighborhood, you see it everywhere. And this role of us, this duality, if you will, of raising a grandchild, and also very concerned and cheering for your child to make wise decisions and make the right turn and get the help that they need. And then for a lot of us, there's a third area they wrestle with, and how do we cover all these costs? I didn't count on diapers. I didn't count on this or that and the other thing. And healthcare costs are increasing. Inflation's going crazy. And, my husband and I just thought we were going to go out to the pasture and everything was going to be terrific. And Social Security was what we were counting on. And now life has changed. And that's why Generations United is so needed. to be an advocate for the grand families. And the work that you do is just absolutely terrific, supporting us. And I just want to encourage our listeners again, if you are not aware of it, go to gu.org, generationsunited.org, or grandfamilies.org, and learn about all the resources. If this is a new website for you, I just want to tell you, you're not alone. There are at least 2.5 million of us out here, and we need to all come together and advocate for the least of us who need the most support. And because none of us counted on this, and none of us, we gladly picked up the mantle and started running with it. And now let's see if we can't get the support that is necessary for everyone that's part of a grand family to just finish so strong. And as you are, Robyn, you're doing absolutely a great job, and you're always a cheerleader for us out here and in the GU community. But what have you learned in your grand family mission that you wish you knew before you became a grand family?
Oh, let's see. There's so many lessons, huh, Craig? I like probably the rest of the 2.5 million people. I had my future planned out. I planned on working in child welfare until I retired, and do nothing or take naps whenever I want to. And that didn't happen with a 4-month-old baby who was injured.
Right.
So I guess what I've learned is to plan for the future you think you're going to have, but also be prepared for the one that you actually get. Because like you said, Craig, I mean, it's expensive. I used up my entire retirement on court fees and attorneys. So
right.
He'll ask me, when are you going to not work? I'm like, when you don't need toys or, baseball gear.
Or pants.
Yeah, never.
Well,
Yeah.
that legal costs and court costs, we haven't touched on that, Robyn. It's just outrageously expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you don't have proper representation, you could be in deep weeds, and it's just so important. And that's a really valid point you made. I know in the Michigan area here, we have had one of our guests is an elder law attorney, and he has offered his services for our listeners if they want to get a free consultation with him. And maybe he's not the guy that you end up with to do your estate plan or anything like that, but he can point you in the right direction for free. And isn't that a beautiful thing?
That's wonderful. And that's another thing, Craig, we don't think about is, we worry about 401k if you've got it, spend that all on them. But what happens? And the kids worry about it. What happens when something happens to us, right? Because we're sometimes all they have, and there's a lot of anxiety around that. So it's important to have planning for that, just in case.
There's financial planning, there's estate planning, there's a lot of absolutely necessary decisions that must be made on top of running the grand family, and dealing with everything else in life. But we're just so thankful that Generations United is out here for us. We're thankful for the work that you do, and for this whole army of grand families that are coming together to support one another. And it does take a village. I don't know what we do without our neighbors, our aunts and uncles, and everyone else that comes alongside our tribe, if you will, to support my little granddaughter. And just want to encourage you that if you're listening at home and you're not part of a small group or a community, you need to be part. You can't do this alone, right, Robyn? You can't. And
that's right. Peer support, other organizations, grassroots organizations in your community. There's something somewhere close to you. You've got to get involved in that, because I tell you what, it's a big lift off your shoulders to be able to connect with somebody who understands.
Right. And the first way to connect is go to gu.org or grandfamilies.org and find out about the resources that are already available at Generations United. And Robyn Wind, I just can't thank you enough for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life. I hope you will come back from time to time and update us on any changes in legislation, if there's anything new that Generations United is doing on behalf of the Grant families, you have an open door. Anything you want to share, we would love to have you come on and share it with our audience.
Craig, thank you so much. And I'm excited to meet everybody. I know you can always email me at rwind@gu.org. And I'm just thankful to be here, Craig.
And that's about the easiest email you're ever going to hear about. rwind, WIND, @gu.org. It short and sweet. And Robyn, thank you so much for being our guest here. And we look forward to seeing you real soon. And we appreciate you being on It's a Grand Life. Thanks again.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you for joining us for another It's a Grand Life. Remember to never waste your pain. God can use your situation to bless others even halfway around the world. Be sure and subscribe to It's a Grand Life on our Facebook page, as well as YouTube and any of the various podcast channels that feature the Grand Life podcast. When it comes to raising a grand family, remember the words of the Apostle Paul, who said in 1 Corinthians 13, "Love is patient, love is kind, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails." In leading your grand family, it's going to take faith, hope, and a whole lot of love. Please reach out to me. I can be a blessing to you and pray for you, or help you connect to free resources that can make your journey a little easier.